being in a tech ecosystem, we don't have a lot of women. For me to be here is proof that women can do it, women can be leaders, and I hope to inspire other women, especially young African women, to be bold and courageous, follow their passions, and when they're offered that seat at the table, to take it and take the front seat at changing the African narrative.
Since I joined Impact Africa Network, my thinking has really been expanded. I now for sure believe that if I put my mind and time into something, I can bring life-changing ideas into fruition.
The culture at IAN encourages continual learning. This makes someone to source for outlets for learning, opportunities for growth in order to continually ensure that they do the best at their job. Also working with Mark, who has this great vision for changing the African narrative. He wants to take us on that journey with him. Pushes you to the limit, pushes you to want to be better.
My thinking has changed from looking for problems to being a solution provider. That way, I will stop worrying and actually do something.
I really enjoy being a leader and at the same time being a student. At Impact Africa Network, there's a lot of continuous learning and development. So it gives you this hunger for knowledge. It pushes you to be the best possible version of yourself, because you cannot change the African narrative being anything less.
At Impact Africa Network, we bet on the women. We believe women are much more effective at leading and nurturing complex people-centric systems, and startups are the quintessential people-centric systems of our day.
As the Women of Impact Africa Network, we will be hosting a livecast series with global female leaders and change makers, having conversations with the intent of inspiring a new generation of female leaders just like ourselves. If you or someone you know should be part of this conversation, we would love to host you. Talk to us.
You can also be a change maker by helping us create more leadership opportunities for women by donating today. IAN is a registered U.S. non-profit charitable entity under Section 501c3.
Perfect. Great. Episode 5. I can't believe we've come this far. This is episode 5 of Power to Women, which is a livecast series where we have conversations with global female business leaders and change makers, where they share their story with the intent of inspiring a new generation. And it's brought to you by us from Impact Africa Network, a nonprofit here in Nairobi on a mission to ensure young, talented Africans participate in the digital transformation of Africa as creators and owners. Today, I'm joined by two amazing people, one of them being one of our guests that we are really anticipating to talk to today, but also a different colleague than you're used to. Her name is Damaris. Damaris, you can introduce yourself and go ahead and introduce our guest for today.
Awesome, Phyllis. Good evening, everyone, or good morning from wherever you are. We're happy to be joined by all of you today. My name is Damaris Kongin. I'm the PR Fellow for Impact Africa Network. And today we are happy to have a different guest who's also going to share with her experiences with the hopes of inspiring a new generation of female leaders. And so today I'm excited to introduce Cheryl Contee. She's the award-winning CEO of the digital agency called Do Big Things. It's a diverse company that is using a new narrative and new tech to create global change in a new era. She's also the author of the Amazon bestseller, Mechanical Bull. It's a book that talks about how you can achieve startup success, and that it helps you to just navigate through the startup world, which is something that we are actively pursuing right now. Previously, Cheryl was also the CEO of Fusion Strategy, which brought Silicon Valley startup culture to the world's leading causes and campaigns. She's also the co-founder of Attentively. It's the first tech startup with a Black female founder to be acquired by NASDAQ company. And last but not least, Cheryl is also the proud co-founder of Yes We Code. She's also been featured on different platforms from the Washington Post, New York Times, Vanity Fair, San Francisco Mag, Black Enterprise, BBC, CNN, among others. And Cheryl also serves on boards and advisory committees, including Me Truths Nation and Greenpeace USA. So yeah, we're happy to have you, Cheryl, and we hope that your experience and knowledge can inspire more young people. I can just allow you to say something about yourself and highlight one of your biggest achievements from what I have listed, the many good things you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Phyllis and Damaris, for having me. And hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with Impact Africa Network. In a lot of ways, this is a dream come true for me, believe it or not, to have this conversation. I'm here in Silicon Valley. This is actually my deck. Welcome to my patio. I have a view of the houseboats right now, behind me. I would say my biggest achievement really is being a mom. And this is a joke that some of you, may get it. It gets a lot of big hits here in Silicon Valley when I talk about it. I sold my company attentively, as you mentioned, to a NASDAQ company, and that was really challenging. But at the time, I was, very pregnant, heavily pregnant. So sold my company in July 2016, had my son home August 2016. And I like to joke that he's my new startup. I don't know what the exit strategy is. And I'm not sure what, the runway is about 20 years. So it's a little different from my previous startups.
That's very interesting. It's interesting how you say you count your son as one of the startup. I'm sure raising a kid is also quite work. It's not to be considered as just a normal thing. So did you know that you're going to get to the startup world? Like growing up, is this what you wanted? Or what was that journey for you to discovering that you can build stuff, you can create, you can be a founder?
Absolutely not. I was trained, from very young. Everyone in my extended family said, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be a doctor. And I think that's true, particularly here in the United States among minorities, and immigrants, where, people, really say, oh, here's a talented kid. You should be a doctor or you should be a lawyer. Maybe sometimes you should be an engineer. But I think the example of, small businesses being successful or even becoming big businesses, entrepreneurship isn't necessarily, as big an aspiration for, a lot of minority families here in the United States, in part because they're risky. I think they're seen as very risky. And, people think, being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, these are safe jobs, they're prestigious jobs, very stable and, well earning, right? You can provide for your family. So no, it wasn't anything I imagined. And yet, if you read the book, Mechanical Bull, you'll see, I try to make the book both very informative. There's a lot of very practical step-by-step information in there about how to rock your startup. But, I also make it funny, because I like to have fun. Life should be joyful. And, one of the stories I tell is being a kid. And my first small business was charging people to watch me and my boyfriend in the first grade kiss. Because we were deeply in love, as much in love as 6-year-olds can be. And other kids, just thought it was, hilarious. We would lean in like this, from far away and kiss. And other kids thought that was hilarious and really interesting behavior. And, I was like, we're not monkeys in a zoo here. If you want to watch us kiss, it was a sliding scale, 5 to 10 cents for little kids, 25 cents for bigger kids. And, we made a lot of money. So, that entrepreneurial nature was in me. And I think it's in a lot of people. You'll see kids, the type of kid who sets up their own little office, right? A mock office. That kid, has that spark or starts their own little business selling things.
I think it's interesting how you describe how you discovered your desire to start entrepreneurship. And it's actually important because most of us are really, and just everybody, it's something we're trying to do, to just branch out of the traditional way of thinking, that there's a certain safe place where if you work or if you do a certain thing, it should, give you that safety net. And it's okay to, take the risk of going to start something new that you're unsure of, and, just breaking those fears that you have. So, yeah, it's very impressive how you started your journey. I'll hand it over to Philip.
Absolutely.
Okay,
and
keep going, Cheryl.
Oh, yeah. One of the things that I tell people here, I do a lot of talks on entrepreneurship, and, just going back to the conversation we had about risk and it being seen as risky to launch your own business. And, what I tell people is the perceived risk is higher than the real risk. It is true here in the United States, 90% of startups will fail. And that's for a lot of reasons. And any seasoned executive, for your next job understands that there are a lot of reasons why your business might not have succeeded that have nothing to do with you. And the good news is that even if your startup fails, and it probably will, you have a lot to bring to an employer now. You have shown that you are a dreamer, you are ambitious, you are a hard worker, you have performed at an executive level. And so you are now qualified for a higher position than, where you started. And so, I think the perceived failure, is what holds a lot of people back from doing it. And yet if they understood that even if you fail, you can fail up, into a higher position and a higher salary.
Yeah, Damaris, do we still have you? I think, yeah, we might have lost her a bit due to connection. Welcome to Africa. But I can pick it up from from where she left off. And you said something. You're back now. Can you hear us? If you can note, yes.
I think there was a delay.
Yes, there was a delay. Sorry. Maybe you can go ahead before I pick it up.
Okay, sure. So you mentioned how it's important to understand that like it's okay to fail, like you can fail up. Was there any stage in you founding your company that you almost got to a point of saying, okay, this is it, I want to now, I want to give up on this? Because I'm sure you had so many of those moments where you were like, okay, I've come this far, but there's so many challenges that I'm facing with this or that. What would you say about that?
Oh, Damaris. I mean, every other day, and that's why the book, that I wrote, I wrote the book. It's basically the book I wish I'd had when I started out. And the reason it's called Mechanical Bull, I don't know, how many people know, what those are. But, basically a mechanical bull in the United States, it's basically a giant machine, that acts like a bull, and you ride the bull, right? And it's supposed to be fun. But, when it's a wild ride, and usually you fall off. You almost always fall off. That's the point of the ride. And, when men ride the mechanical bull, people are looking at their strength and their stamina. When women, ride the mechanical bull, they're looking at other things, right? They're looking at, all of the fun lady parts. So it's a different ride, for women, to be sure. And, so for us, it was difficult. You probably have heard of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, and Ginger Rogers is famous for saying, he gets all the credit for being such a good dancer, but I'm doing the same thing backwards and in heels. And certainly it felt like that at times, that we were, doing it the hard way. With a startup in particular, a tech startup, one day, we would feel like, oh, we're going to be queens of the world. We're going to be millionaires. It's going to be amazing. And literally the next day we were like, oh boy, wow, this was a fun ride. We did as much as we could. It's over. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, I do think that it takes a lot of strength and character, to get through those moments, right? And really believe in yourself. And that's, I think, one of the most important takeaways that I had from having a startup, is that no one is going to believe in you more than you. And if you don't believe in you, you're not going to convince your customers, you're not going to convince, your vendors or your investors. It starts with you believing that you're smart enough and resourceful enough to figure out a way out of any challenge.
I think you make a really good point. I think I even had you say this in, I think, one of your interviews, that there's no way you can convince someone about something you yourself do not actually believe in. So they can see through you when they see you're so unsure of your idea or whatever you're trying to pitch. So I think you make a really great point there.
Great. I mean, I'm going to pick up from, let's dwell on the book, Mechanical Bull. You've mentioned a few things like a lot of startups are going to fail, and you've seen them fail. But in your book, you almost talk about what startups need to do to succeed. So can you tell us what are some of the things that you've seen people do that have caused failure, and what are the things that you would recommend as Cheryl to ensure there's success in a startup that someone is doing?
That's a really great question, Phyllis, and I wish people asked it more often. I would say, in terms of failure, often what I find is that people are not focused on revenue and reputation in that first year. The first year, you've got to drive both of those really hard, and they, to a certain extent, it's circular. Your reputation, helps drive your revenue, and as you are driving revenue, you're building your reputation, right? And so those are the key things. And sometimes people are not focused on those things. Maybe they're focused on noodling around with the product, and they're not paying attention to those other factors. Another thing that tends to erode businesses is shared vision among the founders. If you're infighting with each other, if you're spending a lot of time focused on conflict internally, it means you're not focused on revenue and reputation, and that external push, and concentric circle of building out that you need to think daily about.
Reputation is an interesting concept to bring up. And I mean, reputation connotes what other people perceive you as. So what things should people do to ensure that is out there? Because sometimes you can be caught up within yourselves, not knowing what other people think about you. I don't know even how you answer that question, but I hope you get me. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely can answer that question. I mean, right. It is one of those ephemeral concepts, right? Reputation. What does that mean? Where does it come from? Reputation, I believe that reputation starts inside you. What's your, how do you carry yourself with dignity, integrity, justice, compassion, right? And then how does that filter out into all of your business dealings, right? All of your relationships with people. Who you are is absolutely manifested throughout your organization. If you're the head or the founder of your startup, your strengths and your weaknesses will absolutely, filter out and manifest themselves in how your business operates and how your business is perceived. So anything you can do that plays to your strengths, that mitigates your weaknesses, is going to help you build that reputation. But then reputation is also built on, what is your thought leadership out in the world? How are you contributing, to your practice and to your community? How are you helping others? Does the work that you're doing help others? Are you, being fair to your employees? Are you providing a good service or a fantastic product, that works? Right? And are you delivering good customer service? When someone calls with a question or a problem, how are they treated? All of these things, start to, impact your reputation. Of course, advertising, is one way to balance and build your reputation, but ultimately, an advertisement can only go so far. People's experience of you, your employees, right, your product or your service is what builds your reputation over time.
Great. I think that almost draws back to what is the culture within the company that you're setting up. Now, tell us more about Do Big Things. This is your current venture, and I find I've read about it, but our audience have probably not read about it. I've seen all the people that are involved that you're working with have had a history in working for social good. So tell us more about it. And also, I think 2 questions in one, more about Do Big Things, but also what was that moment that you realized you wanted to do this thing, you wanted to set up such a platform called Do Big Things?
Absolutely. Well, Do Big Things is a digital agency that works with the world's leading nonprofits, foundations, candidates for political office and corporations to provide the new narrative and new tech for the new era in which we're all living. And we were founded in 2016, we were founded in 2018, but it was starting in 2016 that after Donald Trump was elected, I looked around our space. We've always been in impact or, social entrepreneurship. And I looked around our space and said, we need to be doing something differently. If this could happen here in the United States, that a person like this could be seen as a leader, we should be doing better in our work and in our digital organizing and engagement around important issues. And so, we merged with another company. I had Vision Strategy, my prior agency. We merged with another group. We grew. We are a we ran tens of millions of dollars worth of digital ads in the 2020 election cycle, and we are really excited that we're going to have, I think, better leadership here in the United States starting in January, and that's in part due to our efforts. We worked with I trained personally hundreds of grassroots digital organizing groups around the country, but our team all over the United States, including in places you may have been hearing about, like Arizona. We work to engage as many voters as we could. But we also work with corporations. We work with corporations like Google, Etsy, NBC Universal, who brings a lot of your favorite TV shows. Salesforce has been a client. So we work with a host of different organizations who are wanting to engage citizens on important issues and enlist them to work together.
Great work you're doing there, I must admit. I think I want to delve deep as to how you work, especially with the corporates like Salesforce, or if you have like a success story that you can tell us, help us and the audience to understand better, if possible.
Sure. I think Etsy is a really great example. Etsy, for those of you, most people know about Etsy, but for those who don't know, Etsy is a giant marketplace of goods. Anyone can create, an artisan product and then, sell it on Etsy. So it's this giant marketplace, and most of Etsy's sellers are women. They're mostly women working from home. They create, their handbag or, their, whatever it is, their pot, whatever it is that they make. And, these women are independent, they're working from home, they have needs, they have policy needs, to make sure that they're able to, continue to sell their marketplace or, understand their taxes. And so we've worked with Etsy on their advocacy. So bringing together their sellers and community to say, look, we as Etsy, the corporation, and you as, an independent individual working from your home, selling your goods, there are some policies that the government is putting forth that we have interests in common. And let's join together. We want to help educate you on this issue because we want to protect you as a company. Protecting you as a company means that we all continue to succeed. And so I'm really proud, of the work that we've been doing there, helping, individual, female entrepreneurs, be successful, with a mostly female run company.
Great. Good job again, Cheryl. Good job, especially in that market and in this time, and success with whatever has happened in the US, which we are happy for you people. And just right before I invite Damaris, I'm sure she has a bit more questions. I'd like to encourage our audience to engage with us on our social media pages with the hashtag #PowerToWomen. You can leave us your questions or questions for Cheryl and she'll answer. Damaris, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Phyllis. On to just even the points that you've just talked about, that at Do Big Things, you really champion for women leadership and that diversity. And also as the first Black female co-founder of a startup that was acquired by NASDAQ, would you say that we are there yet in regards to diversity and inclusion at the workplace? And if not, what do you think we can still do about it?
Oh, there's still so much work to be done in terms of diversity in the workplace, as you know, and actually I've been working ever more closely with the impact seat. You can check them out at theimpactseat.com. And their founder, Barbara Clark, is among one of the leading angel investors in Black female innovation and tech startups. And her vision is, look, if we're not investing in Black women and making them succeed, it's going to be hard for anyone to succeed ultimately, at least in the American economy. And I think there's a lot of lessons from the American economy that others can take in other countries. So diversity, inclusion, and equity, I talk about it not as a moral imperative. Of course, it's good. We should all be inclusive, right? We should all, have a chance to make our highest contribution that we can make, whatever that is. But ultimately, it's an economic imperative. I don't know about, Nairobi, but here in the United States, women buy 70% of everything. Literally, that's the statistic. And so if you're not, understanding, what women want and what women need, you're missing out on a whole bunch of money, right? Like, it just makes more sense that, you would look to the people who are actually the customers and pull from them ideas and products, and solutions that then, are going to increase everyone's boat. And look, genius lies within each and every one of us. And if we only think that genius lies, in a group of people with a certain piece of anatomy, we're really missing out, right, on incredible breakthroughs that we can have, as a global civilization. And so, I believe that we should be trying to uncover that genius, unlock these new products and solutions that are going to solve the world's problems going forward, and not worry as much about where they're coming from, but evaluate them on the strength of their ideas.
I think you make a really great point. And yeah, about even Nairobi, us at Impact Africa Network, we're really championing for women leadership. So we are in the business of building startups that are going to bring change. And so in those very startups that we are building, we are putting women to lead them, because we believe that they are capable of leading these complex systems. So I think I agree with you that even in developing of products, we need to have more women in designing, in so many other things, because we are all capable of doing it, and it's about time that we have that diversity. I'd also like to know, is there do you think being a woman impacts your leadership style, or what do you think about that? Does being a woman impact your leadership style?
I think it does. I think it does. And, we can see, right now that, in countries that are led by women, they've actually had a stronger and better COVID-19 response. I think that, women have a lot to bring to leadership in terms of, our strength in relationship building, our communication abilities. I think that women also tend to think of others often before themselves. Sometimes that is a weakness, but it can also be a strength. When women are the type are trained often, but also by our character, by our nature. We want to see everyone be well. And we really put a lot of emphasis on that. So I do think that being a woman, has impacted, my leadership style in terms of, being more inclined to listen than to talk. I really try to, bring people together, in consensus as much as I can, so that everyone feels invested, they feel heard, and they feel ready to, join together in a team environment, rather than, a top down, like I'm the boss, you do what I say, especially as new generations are coming up, they're not responsive to that kind of leadership. Which is, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes a male approach, to bringing a team together is, command and control. And, we're finding in younger generations that, they really want to, within their sphere, feel as though they're a leader. Maybe they're not a leader of the entire organization, but they're a leader of their project, of their piece of the puzzle. And so I think, women often excel in creating that type of leader of leaders type of organization.
Okay, I agree with you, and there's the point about, of course, giving women these positions, but do you have like a specific, or do you frequently witness women making certain mistakes at the workplace? In your era of leadership, have you seen a certain kind of trend of maybe women and how they maybe make mistakes at the workplace? Yeah.
Sure. I think one of the mistakes women often make is not being assertive enough. And, it is a fine line, right? Between, being perceived as, aggressive, right? Or bossy, as a woman, or, those types of adjectives, or even being a bitch. And, look, don't be afraid of being a bitch. You can have people like you, or you can have people respect you. And it's not necessarily binary, but ultimately, if you worry more about being respected than being liked, that's going to uh, help you move further. That doesn't mean that being liked isn't important. Obviously, I want people to like me. I want people to love me, ideally. But at the same time, it's more important that people respect my ideas. And so don't give up. If you put forth an idea and people don't get it at first, and sometimes that's because you're a woman and they're just not taking you seriously or not listening to you, or if a man, takes your idea, and starts to run with it and, makes it his own, speak up, don't let that, continue to persevere. Again, no one's going to believe in you more than you. No one's going to advocate or defend you better than you. And so make sure that, your voice is heard, and if you're in a position where people aren't hearing you, where they don't respect you, where they're not listening to you, leave. Figure it out. It might take you some time to find that next place, but you don't have, don't surround yourself and don't allow yourself to be treated poorly. There's always another opportunity out there, to be successful.
Personal story. Sounds like you have quite immense experience in having to stand up for yourself. I'd imagine that's rightfully so, especially in the society that you live in. But I want to dwell more actually on your personal story. It seems, of course, for you to have the knowledge you have learned it, but also were there people in your life, maybe in the capacity of a mentor or supporters? I'm just trying to get how much support in terms of mentorship did you receive, and is that something that you would recommend to your journey? And this is in reference to the fact that I read, and I stand to be corrected, that your first venture was in 2006, if I'm not wrong, right? So for you to get to that place where you actually started something, were there people who held your hand to help you believe in yourself, to help you know that this is something that you could do? Cheryl.
Absolutely. I've been so fortunate to, have people who sometimes saw something in me that I didn't see in me, and who encouraged me, to pursue leadership or achievement or start something new. Some of those people have been white men, who have been, incredibly supportive. Some were friends, some were bosses, who really encouraged me. And in some ways, they were able to see some of the discrimination, that I was experiencing before I saw it, and were able to, help me navigate that. So, I think that, advocates can come in different forms. At the same time, I've learned as much from the haters as well, from the people who weren't supportive. I've had bosses who were terrible. And, I, took a step back. And if you're able to cultivate that type of detachment in yourself, I encourage it, because it's able to take a step back and say, this is a pretty negative experience. I don't like the way I'm being treated. I don't like the way this people treats other people or even themselves. What can I learn from this? Right. And how can I be different? When I am in a position of authority someday, what would I do differently than this person, and to what end? Right? What would I hope to accomplish by doing this differently? And how will I know, that I'm being successful in a way that this person is clearly not?
Great. Seems like you had an assortment, and that's the thing about life. You meet an assortment of people for positivity. I'm curious as to how you do big things and all other things that you've co-founded, other companies that you've co-founded before, in terms of culture and values? What are some of the values that you uphold very highly, especially in the context of the ventures that you've started?
Absolutely. I would say all of the ventures that I've started, and I'm on a number of boards. I'm on many nonprofit boards as well, board of directors. And with all of the organizations in which I participate, I believe that trust and transparency are incredibly important. Obviously, not everyone needs to know everything all of the time. But at the same time, people know when you're not telling the truth. Okay, I mean, they just know. People are intuitive, by nature. So people want to know the truth, and it doesn't help anyone, to spin a story. I do think that other things that I find important: collegiality, right? Are we behaving as colleagues? I don't like in factions, where there's a group inside a company who's in competition with another group and they're fighting all the time. Again, that type of infighting, it sucks up an awful lot of energy that ultimately needs to be pointed externally in order to drive that revenue and reputation. So, I think that, making sure that people are supporting each other, and it's more that us against the world type of mentality, or us for the world, hopefully, if you're doing it for impact, that, you need to have each other's back, and also helping people have respect for each other. Even if someone, maybe you're a developer, and you have a very different type of job than someone who is a content writer, how can you work together? How can we bring these skills together and cross-pollinate such that, we're creating and doing something new, we're innovating. So I think that innovation, particularly by bringing together different skills, and mashing them up to then create something new, is something that I really try to bring to all of my organizations.
That's a mashup. That's good culture. I mean, I feel like culture is what I've learned, or I've been learning over the last few months, is just how important it is to set up culture, a good culture that will help to propel a company to greater things. So let's talk about you, Cheryl. What is it that you're doing to ensure that you remain, one, relevant and impactful as a leader? You can think about it as a leader, as a CEO of Do Big Things, but in all the boards that you sit in. What personally are you doing? Something that a young woman or a woman coming into a leadership position can borrow.
Absolutely. Well, again, I don't know about Nairobi and Kenya, but at least here in the United States, Black women are seen as these endless givers, that you just give and give and give, and you're not supposed to expect to get anything back. And that's really unhealthy, as it turns out. That's not sustainable. That's a good way into an early grave. And so, I think one of the things that I have learned is that, as they say on an airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help others, before you can put on other people's oxygen mask. And so, I spend a fair amount of energy taking care of me. I do a little bit of yoga every morning. I meditate every evening. I look hard at my nutrition. I try to take a walk every day, for a little exercise and to clear my head. I'm hydrate, all of those things, help sustain me, and give something back to me, so that I then am revitalized enough to give more of myself to others. And so I really, can't stress that enough, that, we as humans, our spirit is infinite. We can do anything. We have lit the night, but with electricity, we can fly like the birds, right? However, the body is finite, and you have to take care of the body. You must, care for, this internal plant in order to unleash the infinite.
You make a really great point, Cheryl, from self-care to just everything you're doing to stay relevant and to stay, just headstrong in all that you're supposed to do. We have an interesting question from one of our viewers, and she asks, is there a time when Cheryl felt like she was not moving forward in her career or life?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. It's happened to me. I think it happens to anyone across the point of their career, where you take a step back and you look around, you're like, what am I doing here? What's like, I feel like I'm standing still, or, I feel like I'm thwarted. I'm blocked from, continuing to achieve. And there's a lot of things you can do about that. Obviously, you can, begin to look for another job, or you can start to plan your next venture, or you can look at where you are now and say, wow, well, what could we be doing more? How can I innovate, or have a new experience, here, within, my organization. And sometimes that might mean, hiring someone new, who's bringing in fresh ideas and fresh energy. Maybe that's starting to network and get into some new circles. Maybe that's getting coaching or counseling. I have an executive coach that I've worked with for years, and it's really helpful to run past him, ideas, or, let him know, hey, I feel a little stuck, and he'll help me brainstorm some ideas. Speaking of brainstorming, if you're feeling that way, particularly if you're in a position of authority, chances are maybe some other people within your organization or within your, startup, your entrepreneurial community are feeling that way too. Bring people together, be that leader that convenes people and says, hey, what could we be doing new, different, innovative, that pushes our industry further. And you might be surprised, that, multiple, many hands make light work in terms of starting to, create that breakthrough together.
I think you make a very good point. So it's basically when you feel that way, you stop, you reevaluate, and just share with someone if you can, look for a way forward, and you'd be surprised, maybe you have other people experiencing what you are, and you can share ideas on how to, change how you're feeling and just take a positive step forward. Okay, so we have numerous of our fellows who are women, and they are working on numerous projects which we intend for them to, scale into startups. And what would you tell these women? What would be your advice to women who are going into leadership position for the first time? Because you see, these are women who are now leading their projects, and they're just moving the needle, and it's something they're doing for the first time. What would you tell these young women?
Absolutely. I would say listen. I think that, and again, I think this is a skill that women often, have and are encouraged to cultivate. But, I think the best leaders ultimately listen. Listen more than you talk, especially as you're coming in, and, go on a listening tour, as it's called, actually sit down with individuals and, understand, ask them some questions, what are your pain points? Right? What's working now? What are you doing now that you like, and how do you want to build that? I very much adhere to a servant leadership type model where, I tell my team all the time, look, my job as CEO is twofold. First, it's to spread the word about how amazing you are and get people excited about working with you. And two, it's to make sure you have everything you need, all of the resources, all of the confidence, a great reputation in order to rock your job. So you tell me, what do you need? What do you need to do? What resources can I bring, to help you be more successful? Because if your team is successful, you're going to get the credit for a lot of that.
You make your point is it's so interesting how this is something that's been mentioned before by a different speaker, how you should always listen for, talk to people who have been in these positions before and actually listen to what they're trying to say, what their experiences have been. Just look for the best person in the game and learn from them, and it will actually move the needle for you. So I really I appreciate that point. I think I can hand over to Phyllis.
Yeah, I think that's a point that will stick with all of us. Listen, always listen, be an active listener, whether it's upwards or horizontally or even just from below. Be an active listener. I think we are 44 minutes in, but we can take another question from one of the audiences. And they're asking, at what point did you feel successful? At what point did you sit and say, I am successful? I think you spoke a lot more about your son, but Maybe you can answer this question from Mumbi.
Yeah,
Karanja.
Mumbi, that's such a great question. And I don't think anyone's ever asked that. So thank you. Gosh, I have to think, I think when I first bought my house, I bought a house back when I lived in Washington, D.C. And, that was a big day. I remember, moving in, and I laughed, I cried, I had like all of these emotions all at once. And that felt like a really big deal. I would say, the day that I wasn't stressed out, at the grocery store about, did I have enough money in the bank, to pay, for my groceries, that was also a big day, of feeling like, okay, I've achieved a level of, financial success that buying something doesn't create stress for me anymore. But look, I think, the most successful that you can feel is when, those around you, you'll start to get external validation from those in your life, that, they see you as succeeding. And I think that can be really important. But ultimately, again, look to yourself. Success can look really different to a lot of different people. And, it can help to, I'm a big fan of visioning, and having a vision of, what is it that I want to do? And that way you'll know, when you start to get there, like, oh gosh, I had this vision 5 years ago, and here I am, and maybe I've even, broken the cloud barrier, of what I thought I could achieve. So that's always a really exciting moment, when I would say then the next level of success for me was then feeling like, oh, this is a thing that I never even dreamed would happen. This event, this moment now is something that I couldn't have even imagined for myself. I've broken the cloud barrier of what I even thought was possible. And that's, I think, one of the highest levels of success for anyone.
On that same line, before we leave that same thought process, from where you sit, from your experience, what would you say, or one or two, three things that is the biggest challenge for the next generation of women, and especially women of color, trying out in this space of startups and innovation? What is your opinion on that?
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges women face is how to balance home life and their work life. And I think that this is a continuing challenge. Certainly, here in the United States, childcare is very expensive, and not always easy to get. And certainly COVID-19, with all of the lockdowns, this has placed an extra burden on women who are, trying, and we have a lot of moms in our family. In our company, who are having to educate their children online, with their schools, and, try to attend meetings. And, some of that work doesn't always, fall, to some of their, the fathers, their partners, or mothers are stepping up, and sometimes they're not. And so I think that, really understanding that, women need flexibility in their work. We've tried to create a very family friendly business for all of my businesses, where people, I don't care, where you work from. I don't care really, when you start work. What I care is the work getting done, and I think that, chaining, particularly women to a desk, in an office 9 to 5, just isn't realistic in the modern world. And the more you can create that flexibility where women can design their day so that they can keep their home life, and their business life in balance, where it's like, yes, I'm in my heels, I'm going to this business meeting, but I also need to take my kid to the doctor right after, and then I'll be online, checking my email, making sure that women have that flexibility makes all the difference in women then being able to succeed, at those next levels.
Thanks, Cheryl. We are 48 minutes in. Time is out for us here. But I think one of the things I would like to highlight is that a lot of the things we would have learned more are in your book, Mechanical Bull, where you talk about how to create startup success out of your experience. And some of the things you say, you actually mentioned and discussed that you wish you knew before you started. But you've had success being a Black woman on a company that was acquired by NASDAQ. That's something to be spoken about. So I think we'll wrap it up here. We're 50 minutes in. Thank you for making time. Thank you to our audience. But before we go, I'll just like to remind you that Impact Africa is a nonprofit startup studio where we are committing to changing the African narrative. And we firmly believe women are critically important in this mission. That's why we are holding this livecast to share experiences of other women from other markets with everyone. But to support us in creating these positions, creating these opportunities, you can do so by joining our micro donations program for as little as $30 a month and be part of this exciting movement. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today with Cheryl and Damaris. And that's it from us for tonight, or for this morning, from wherever you come watching from. Thank you.